What's going on, guys? So I have an interesting project today on the new 2024 Ford F450 Platinum. This is kind of a tough one because I'm doing a lot of exploring here. As you can see, I got stuff taken out. I got the hood open because I've been tinkering in there as well. And as most people who own Super Duties know by now, is you have the option for upfitter switches. Upfitter switches are essentially accessory switches that turn things on and off, pre-wired, pre-relayed into your vehicle. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of research on YouTube and on forums to find out specifically where you tap into these wires, and I've found for the most part where most people say you need to do it, and that is going to be under the fender here. You actually have access on the inside of the fender surround or the fender cover to get to the wires, but that's not really a smart idea. Ford smartly thought of a way of kind of doing this that makes a little bit more sense than that. So this is your relay and fuse box for your upfitter switches. They have two tabs, one on each side. Ignore the one in the middle. There's one on each side. You press them down with a flathead screwdriver to unpin them, and this box pulls out just enough that you can actually grab that bundle and pull it out. And once you untape it, you have about 6 inches of wire to be able to work with, which is really nice. I still wish they came up with an easier way or simpler way of giving you access to wires. They don't require you to really have to think hard about where the wires are or how you need to tap into them. I think that's just kind of an odd spot for it. It would have been nice if they had, you know, something, this huge gap that they have where you quickly, easily have access to wires, and maybe a cap that passes through the firewall so you can run wires into the vehicle. But that is the traditional way of accessing your 6 upfitter switch wires. It's just going to be your power wires, so you're still going to need to find a chassis ground for whatever you connect. But those can provide enough current, at least a couple of them can, for I believe up to like 40 amps worth of power to like air compressor, things like that. Not enough for a winch, but enough for just about any type of lighting you might put on the truck, as well as other accessory items that you might want to be able to power with the 6 switches. Now, I found another YouTube video of a gentleman who said that he located the wires that pass through into the cab. Now, it took me some time to find those wires. They weren't nearly as easy as he claimed they were to find. So let me show you what I had to do. Now, the wires are tucked up into this area right here. So it is very helpful to remove your glove box, which is the easiest thing you can do. You simply push 2 little spring clips in right here on the side, drop it down, and then this little guide, which dampens it when it comes down, just falls out of place. And then when you put it all the way out and open, you can just lift it right off of the hooks. They make the glove box super, super, super easy to take out, which I really like. Then you're going to want to drop the panel that covers up everything on the bottom right there, and you're going to want to pull the panel off on the side right here as well. All of that together probably takes 5 minutes or less. It's very, very simple to do. These are probably the most difficult because they're push grommets that need to be pulled with the right tool. And this is typically the type of tool you'd want to use to remove those types of grommets. All that said, I found the wires. I did not find them initially. I was actually really frustrated because in his video, he claimed that you just had to pull this access panel right here and they would be right there, which is not true. So if you're hunting for them right there, you're not going to find them. And even if you kind of tug on wires to see if those are what they are, they're not going to move because they tape the harness underneath this area right here. So if you look under here, I found where they had taped it. I cut the tape, and it gives you these wires right here. Now, these are very, very thin gauge wire. He pointed that out in his video, and I have to agree. I would not run anything high current through them. There is a little bit of a wiring guide here with colors, but what I don't know, and I can't really corroborate, is are these upfitter wires? These may not be. It wouldn't make sense to put them such thin gauge unless these were only designed to power low amperage items inside of your vehicle. Radar detector. In my case, I'm trying to wire up my rear view camera mirror, and really what I'm trying to do is connect a small cigarette lighter style plug back here because the challenge I run into with the wiring harness that came with the camera mirror is that it converts it from 12 volts to 5 volts, kind of like USB, at the plug. So I can't just cut the plug off and wire it into 12 volts. It's not going to work that way. So I'm trying to do the least amount of surgery possible, and I want to make this reversible, especially if I want to remove that and upgrade to it. So what I really want to do is just install a small 12 volt plug down here on the bottom. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. You got your wires coming from it, and then you have your two 5-volt USB, and then your 12-volt plugs right here. This is actually the one I removed from my 2017 450 that I had also wired into upfitter switches. Now again, I do not know if those wires are upfitter switch wires, but I can test it. And the way I can test it is I can put power to the truck, put a voltmeter on those, and flip upfitter switches and see if they get power by doing so. If they do, then that's going to be brilliant. And at that point, it'll basically just reinforce the fact that those are designed for very low amperage products. Nothing that you would want to wire up that would draw more than, maybe 2 or 3 amps, I would guess at most. So my theory is that they are not upfitter switch wires, and that he kind of got that wrong. He didn't use them. He ended up connecting to the upfitter switch wires that are up front that I showed you earlier. But I am concerned on what those wires are actually used for, especially that they're cut off the way they are. It would be great if Ford did in fact make those the upfitter switch wires, and they passed the lighter duty wires through, and the heavier duty wires, or the full bundle, goes out there for your lights, your air compressor, your lights, and pretty much that's what most people connect to this stuff, whether they're strobe lights or fog lights or floodlights, whatever. But yeah, if Ford passed some of those connections through into the cab, that would also be fantastic. So I'm going to test those real quick, and I'm going to come back and let you know if those are indeed upfitter switch wires that pass through into the vehicle to also give you wires here, so you don't have to punch wires through your firewall into the cab of your truck. Okay, so I just confirmed with a voltmeter that there is absolutely no voltage coming from those wires tied to those upfitter switches. Do not use those, even if you think you have like a low amperage accessory. Do not use those wires for upfitter switch wires that are under there. You don't know what you're connecting to. I don't even know when they're going to receive voltage. They might even be there for some other diagnostic function perhaps, or maybe even if you have like maybe the Upfitter PTO package where you're going to be tying it into like the Ford Pro system. But they are not tied to your upfitter switches. Don't believe that they are. They're not pass-through wires for that purpose at least. I don't know what else they connect to. I don't know where they go. They're capped off, but they do not produce any voltage with the upfitter switches powered on. So these are not pass-through wires, which is kind of a shame. I wish they were. I suspected they weren't because of how thin a gauge of wire they are. And your upfitter wires are typically very respectable gauge wiring in terms of what they're designed to handle from a current perspective. But yeah, the next project of mine now is going to have to be punching a hole through the firewall so I can feed some wires back here. I tried to go through the grommet. There's a nub coming off of a grommet right above the fuse box under the hood, and I tried going through there with a wire fish, but it wasn't going anywhere. I don't know how that gentleman got a clothes hanger through there far enough to where he could actually feed a wire inside the vehicle, because I certainly couldn't. It would stop. I moved the wire fish around everywhere. I don't know what he did to get a wire through there, and I'm not willing to go through that because there are a lot of AC components and electrical components tucked right here, and one small move that is incorrect could puncture something, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, I'm probably going to have to find another means to feed a wire into the cab of the truck. I might go down the side here and up underneath the panel here and then in, because that seems like the safest route to go and the least likelihood of me damaging something else in the process of running a wire. Okay, so I've made some discoveries in the past couple of days that I wanted to add to this video because I think it's important. So taped to the back side of this harness, you might be able to see it through here. There's this small harness right down here, and that actually has some bare-ended wires, basically wires that don't terminate into anything. And those wires are your pass-through wires. So the wires that I showed you inside of the vehicle are not actually there for upfitters. Those are there to pass wires through your firewall. Now keep in mind, those wires are very, very small gauge, between, I'm going to say 18 to 24 gauge wires. So they're not going to be able to handle a lot of current. So if you plan on passing through your upfitter wires, which are the bundle that connects to this, and connecting them to those pass-through wires, which then go through your firewall into your vehicle, you have to be very, very sure that whatever you're using the wires for on the inside aren't going to overload the wire's capability and possibly cause some type of a fire risk. Again, the wires that pass through, which are specifically called pass-through wires, aren't necessarily for upfitters. They are for you to be able to control things from the inside of your vehicle to the outside of your vehicle. Basically, basically pass through from the inside to the outside, or the outside to the inside. And the gauge of wire is like this stuff. It's really, really thin. It's not going to handle much current. And some of the actual upfitter wires that you have, which are right down here, are able to handle upwards of like 40 amps. So you certainly don't want to use those to power anything that's high amperage or high wattage inside of your vehicle. Just something to keep in mind. So nothing's changed. The wires that are inside the vehicle are bare-ended wires. There's 4 of them, and then there's also a bundle with like 3 or 4 more that are really, really small. But even the largest wires down there are probably 18 gauge at best. And because of that, they will not handle much current in between the firewall, basically from the inside to the outside or the outside to the inside. So if you plan on running your upfitter wires in, you're only going to want to use the smallest of your upfitter wires to connect to those, which then will feed inside of the vehicle. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a lot, and we went over a lot, but again, I do wish that Ford would create a better pass-through option for wires versus the really, really thin-gauged bundle that's included down there. That's actually kind of hard to get to, and the wire ends aren't really long. Plus, the wire on the inside, again, isn't going to be a thick enough gauge to be able to support your higher wattage stuff. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.